Okay, here we are in Pixlr X. In the online program photo editor, we're going to scroll down and launch Pixlr X. Off to the left, we'll see our history, which all our projects will show up here. Create new or stock search. We're going to create new, choosing full HD, and we are going to name project your first and last name, and we're going to call this Poly and whatever animal it is. I am making a chameleon, and we want our background to be white, so we're going to click on this little slider here to make the background white, which the default is white. So when we create, we are going to see a white background. Down in the bottom right corner, we'll see a little plus sign. When we click on a plus sign, that will add a layer over on top of any images, and it is going to ask me what kind of layer I want to create. I am going to always choose empty layer for this project. So because I don't want it to keep popping up and asking me, I'm going to click on the slider that says don't ask me about this again and choose empty. You'll see now that if I go to the plus sign over in the far right, under my layers, it will create clear layers every time I click on the plus sign. On the far left is my toggle home button, my properties, arrange tool, cropping tool, cutout tool, adjusting tool, filter tool, effects tool, liquify, retouch, drawing tool, text tool, add element, and add image. We'll be mainly working with the arrange tool and the drawing tool, as well as adding the image. So we're going to add an image to this background. So we're going to click on this. We're going to browse through our drive and find the photo that we saved to our drive. I'm choosing this wolf, and it's going to ask me, do I want to add the image as a layer in the current document or create a new? I'm going to add that in the current document. And I'm going to move this layer down to the bottom so that it is all set up with all these layers on top, which are clear. I'm going to add all the layers I can until I have all these blank ones on top and that my bottom image is all the way down here at the bottom. Once I have this set up, I am going to go over to my drawing tool, and you want to familiarize yourself with these tools. You have a brush tool, or an eraser tool, a pen tool, and a shape tool. When we start working with these layers, we want to start with the layer that's closest to the background. So I'm going to go to the far right and click on the layer that I want to be working on. You generally want to start from the bottom and work your way up to the top so you don't get confused about the order of the layers. Every layer has an options on it. These three little dots are the layer settings. And when I click on that, it will give me an option to name this. I can choose the blend mode. I can change the transparency. I can lock it into position. I can hide it or make it visible. I can merge down, merge all visible, or flatten the image, duplicate the layer, or delete the layer. I'm going to go back over here to my drawing tool. When I click on the drawing tool, I can also use the keyboard on the shortcut on the keyboard. If I press the letter B, it will take me right to the drawing tool. B stands for brush. For this assignment, I'm going to choose the shape tool first, and I'm going to choose a shape that I want to create on the picture of the image, on the picture of the animal. I want to make sure that the fill button is selected. That is going to fill my shape with color. If I select outline, that is going to add a color to the outside of the shape. But for now, I'm going to leave that off. I'm going to go ahead and choose a color that I want to use for my wolf. You don't have to make it realistic. You can change it to any colors you want, but you generally want to choose a palette before you start working on your assignment. I'm going to use a bunch of cool colors, and I'm going to just change the variance in value that I use for all of these colors. So to begin, I'm going to choose the color that I'm going to select here, and then go over to the wolf's face, and I'm going to drag the shape and place it where I want it to go. It's important that I put every layer or every shape on an individual layer so that I can move these around if I need to later. It's going to be a lot less work if you do that than to try and put them all together on one layer and then try to move things. So every time you go to move onto a different layer, you're going to highlight the layer first, then choose the shape, then choose the color. You also want to think about the animal in terms of shapes. So you want to look at the photograph itself and draw shapes that go along with that face. Once I have drawn the shape, I can move it with the Arrange tool. If I move over here to the far left, I click on Arrange, and this hand will allow me to rotate any pieces. Once I have it in place, I can click off of it, or I can make it larger, or I can rotate it by left clicking so that the hand grabs this handle and rotates the shape around. Once it is in position where I want it to go, I can click off of the Arrange tool to go to another shape, or press the letter B on my keyboard to bring me back to the Shape tool. Alternatively, if I choose the Arrange tool and I right click on that layer, I can duplicate the layer, and then it will put it on top of what I've just created. That way I don't have to recreate that same shape if I want to use it on the opposite side as well. It's important that you just make sure that you have put all of those shapes on a separate layer, and that before you start working on the next layer, you want to click on the blue to highlight it in blue first before you go and pick your shapes. Remember to pick your shape first, then pick your color, then draw onto the layer. As I'm working on all of these shapes and start moving them around, I don't have to recreate every single shape as I'm working. So like I said before, you can rotate and position them, and you can right click, and if you right click and duplicate layer, it is automatically going to put it on a layer itself without you having to click on a separate layer. I can do this multiple times so that I am fitting in all these shapes here together if it is in one section that I'm going to be working with that certain color. If I want to group shapes together, I'm going to check on the layer tab by clicking on visible. When I click on visible, it's going to show me what is on that layer. You'll see that each one of these gray-blue triangles are all on a separate layer. But if I want to group these all together, what I can do is merge them together. That is in the layer option here. When I click on layer settings, the option to merge down or Control E is going to merge it down with whatever is underneath it and put it on that same layer. So if I click merge down, now these two triangles have become part of one layer. And if I merge down again, now all three of these triangles are merged together. If I don't like that, or I think that's a mistake, I can always go down to Control Z or undo, and I can undo my steps until they're all separate again. The advantage of merging things down, if you know that you want to keep those three things together, is that you can move them all together. Now all three are together, and I could right click and duplicate, and I can put this on the opposite side just by flipping it around. This helps with symmetry in your design if you are interested in doing something like that. And making both sides equal. You also want to go and pay attention to all the areas in the photograph that are different colors. Where things are potentially lighter than others, you want to use the same kind of option for the color as well. Make sure as you're working that you always repeat to yourself, choose the layer you want to go on, choose the shape you want, then pick the color. Draw the shape that you want. Go to the Arrange tool, arrange it how you want. Right click to duplicate. And move on to the next layer. Sometimes when I cover something up on an animal, I want to make sure, I want to double check to see what it is, but I don't want to change the position of that shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the layer and click on and off to check on it. Go to my layers options and turn down my transparency so that I can see through that layer. This will help me if I'm doing layers on top of each other. So I'm going to first pick the shape, then I'm going to pick the color, and in this case I'm going to use an outline, which is going to be white. I'm going to draw this over on top of the black shape like that. Now what I can do is I can go back to the transparency of the black shape and turn it back up again so that it becomes solid. As you start working with all the shapes, you may start to notice that you have some gaps in between something. So you may want to go back in to, when you're drawing something, selecting the layer you want to draw on, choose the color. You may want a contrasting color or a color that's going to appear underneath it. and choose a different shape. Choose your shape, then choose your color. Then you can draw that into the object. Now, right now, because I drew that over on top of the triangles, it appears as if it's on top of everything else. If I go over here into my layers bar, I can, with the arrange tool, grab this layer and I can move it down so that it goes underneath the other layers. As I move it down underneath the other layers, you'll see that it will hide it underneath what I'm trying to put it underneath. I can then take my arrange tool and move it into position so that I've created a color on top of a color. I'm going to continue like this until the entire animal is filled with shapes. From time to time, you'll want to add some shapes in here that don't exist. So if you go here to the line tool and you go to the layer that you want to create on, if you draw a line and then draw a line from there and you keep going around, that is going to create your own polygon to fit that situation. This is a little bit more irregular, but that will put all of those things together on one layer. If you don't like a layer, you're going to go to the layer settings and hit delete. If you go to use the drawing tool and choose line, you can increase the line size by bumping this slider up. That is going to thicken the line considerably so that you can see the difference here. When I go to create the polygon, that is going to fit more along the face of this wolf, and it'll be less irregular when I add it to the image. I can also fill this in by using these lines inside that shape, and that will all group those together. So that the lines fill that in. Don't try to draw this in using a brush. You can tell the difference between the pixels in the brush as opposed to using the shape tool to create these shapes. Once that's been created, if I go to my arrange tool now, that one shape will be all one piece. because I put these two shapes on here together, it means that I can't move them independently. So anytime you have a shape in there, which won't allow you to do that, I have to undo everything I did to completely eliminate it and redraw it on another layer so that it can take effect on your drawing. You can also increase the line size so that you don't have to spend as much time filling the inside of the shape if you want it to be filled. Once you take the Arrange tool, you can duplicate that layer and reverse it on the other side. On your layer aspect, you can flip it horizontally. That will flip it so that it is opposite, and then you can place that piece in there so that it is exactly the same on either side. Remember that if I want this dot to appear down below some of these other layers, I'm going to grab the layer here, drag it down the right side on my layers bar, and drop it where I want it to appear. This is going to make the white area on the side of the face that I just added appear as if it is underneath the blue triangles instead of on top of it. Periodically, you'll want to go in and check to see how your progress is going with your animal. You're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you are going to uncheck the visible box, and that is going to show you what your animal looks like with no background image.
When you're done, you'll want to go back into your layers and turn up any places where you turn the transparency down. Then you'll want to go to the bottom layer and using the rectangle shape, fill it in with one solid color and place that on top and turn the background image off. You're going to click Save, name it your first name, Polly, and whatever animal it is, and the word Final. You're going to save it as a PXD first. And that is going to save the entire process that you went through to create it. You're going to close that out and then click and save it again. Using the same file name, you may save it as a PNG or a JPEG, depending on where you want to be posting it. Click download, and then you are done.
This has been another presentation of
Mr. B's Art Room.